Welcome to a short introduction to loops in PHP. Loops are one of the most important things in programming because computers are good at doing repetitive tasks, and loops allow us to systematically describe a mechanism whereby we can program repetitive tasks. We create a program, we can write out a programmatic description of that task, how many times we want to do it, how do we set up that task, and how do we set up the loop itself. And basically a loop is where do we start and when do we finish. So one of the most common loops is the for loop in PHP and in programming in C-type languages, and the reason the for loop is so good is because it allows us to put the mechanism of the loop all in one place. So we put the mechanism of the loop inside the parentheses after the keyword for, and that does all of the setup, the test, and the incrementation of the loop. And after that, in the curly braces, we put the work of what happens in each iteration of the loop. So let's take a quick look at a very simple loop here. And the first thing we do is we create a counter variable, then we set up a test condition, and then we increment the loop. Then we open curly braces and we do some work during each iteration of the loop, whatever the task we want to do is. So here is our very simple first for loop, and let's just have a quick look at what this loop is doing. We have a counter variable here. I is assigned the value of 0. That happens first. Then we test to see if I is less than 5, and if that is true, if that evaluates to true, we go on to this third part here which says increment I. So that means add 1 to the value of I and assign that result back to I. And then we go into here and we do this work here, and basically we're just printing out the value of I to the web page. So let's just take a quick look here. If I press F5, that should output there. We can see the output here, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just using the output function of the Skype text editor here. So if you want to see that, you go to output here on the view menu. You should have output ticked, and you'll also need to have your Skype editor set up to output directly in this way, but you can always of course just flick to your web page, and if I refresh the web page, here we go. So we have the same output in the web page, but I'm just going to go back to the editor and use that instead here for just to because it's handy. Now something to note here is that it's outputting I, and I gets up to 4. We can see down here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And why does it not get up to 5? Because I does actually become 5, but that's never output. And let's just take a look at why that is, because it's an important thing to note about loops is they can be a bit tricky, and sometimes what happens when working with loops is that programmers commonly commit an off by 1 error, what's known as an off by 1 error. They either start at the wrong digit or they finish at the wrong digit. They're often off by 1. These are very common errors in programming because of the way programming works. For instance, in programming we start counting at 0 generally, just to confuse you. We start counting at 0 instead of 1. And this here says less than 5, so I is going to be 4 here when it gets to close to the end of our loop. I is less than 5, so that means I is equal to 4. It's the last time this condition will hold true. Then we go here and we increment I, and I's output. But the important thing to note here is that this increment doesn't happen until after this. So that's something to watch out for. It's one of those gotchas. If we put these here, let's see what this does. Does the same. So that makes no difference. So really you can see what's happening is it doesn't matter whether you're using the post, fix, increment, or the prefix. increment operator. No matter what we do, this is only going to increment after this happens here. So the way this loop works is we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and then we do this, and then we go back here and we do this, then we do this, and then we do this, and so on. So this is the setup condition. This will only happen once. So we can see here that this only happens once. This is what happens here is I is assigned a value of 0, and this is our setup in this first part of the loop. This second part of the loop here is going to happen a number of times, and this is the test condition, and this is to say, should we do this work down here? So we're testing to see, should we do this work down here? And for all the time that I is less than 5, yes. All the time that is true, that if I is true, then we do that work down there, and then we go back up here and we do this. So we increment I here, then we go back here and we evaluate this again. If this is true, we go down here, we do this work, then we go back up here. So that's the way the loop works. It goes here, 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 here. Now when we get to 5, we're going to get to 4 here. At one stage 4 is less than 5, that's true. Then we go down here, we echo 4, you can see 4 is being echoed here, and then we go back up here and we make I, we increment I, and we get 5. Then we go back here, 5 is less than 5, evaluates to false, and then we stop, we exit the loop, we don't do any more. So it's just important to note that the way the loop works, because it's a little bit counterintuitive. You may think that happens and that happens and that happens. That's not the way it works. This happens once, then this happens, then this happens, and this happens, this happens, and this happens, and this happens. So there's your loop there. It goes in a little circle like that, a little counter-clockwise circle there between those 3 sections. So let's let's create another loop here for a minute with an array. We create an array, let's just call it ages, equal is ages is assigned the array, and let's just put some ages in here. Okay, here we have a small array called ages, and let's put in here in our loop, instead of, we'll just change our loop here so that we loop through this array instead, and we'll just copy that there, and we'll use the count function, passing it our ages array variable, and that should evaluate to 0, 1, 2, 3. So this value here should be 3, so we could just put 3 in there instead, and that would do the same thing. But it's obviously better to put the call to the count function here, because we can change the amount of numbers in here and we don't need to change that. So let's just run our example here, see what happens. Okay, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3. So is that what we expected? Well, possibly, because that's what this counter variable is doing. But what will be more useful is if we output the contents of the ages array at index I. So let's do that instead, and let's just click F5 here, and there we go, there's the outputs of the array 12, 21, 34, 67. Now you can see it's looping through these. This is element 0, element 1, element 2, and element 3. And it's important to note that we get as far as 3. We're counting from 0 here, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now the length of this array is actually 4. So this here will be 4. Did I say this was 3 earlier? I meant to say 4. Let's just check what that is now. Let's just echo here. Let's just see if I know what I'm talking about. Now this should obviously say, we'll just comment this out, and we'll just do a bit of housekeeping here. We'll clear this window down here. Whoops. Let's just delete everything in there. Okay, now let's just see echo count ages. I've commented out this echo here, so we won't see that output of the array, but let's just see what the length of the array is. Okay, the length is 4. Now earlier I said that was 3, and that's a classic programming error, because even though we start counting from 0, I said we count from 0, but still when we're indexing something like an array or a string, but when we're counting all the elements in an array, we use the 1, the starting at 1 value, so that's always going to be 4, it's not going to be 3. So why this works then is, let's just delete that. So why this works then is, this executes once, I is assigned the value of 0. Then this executes, this is the test condition to see if we're going to execute here. So every time we test here and then we go here, if this test value is true. So the first time when it's 0, it's going to be less than the count, which is 4. We go here, and then we go here, and it becomes 1. We go here, 1 is less than 4. We go here, then we go here, 1 is 2. Then we go here, 3. Then we go here. Now this goes up now, so 3 is the last number we had there, so that's going to be ages 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, so that's going to be 67, so that's going to output. And then I becomes 4, and we go here, and 4 is less than the count of the array, which is itself 4, so 4 is not less than 4, so that evaluates to false, 4 is less than 4, and we exit the loop. So let's just quickly run the loop again, and you can see that 12, 21, 34, 67.